New set of downs for Locke and the Broncos, and 41 seconds with the timeout to work with. On platform, he's hit. The ball's loose. The Rams are on it. A strip sack and a takeaway. It's Michael Hoecht with both. From the right side of Locke, he gets around the tackle, knocks it out of the throwing hand of Locke, and lands on the football. Welcome to the latest episode of Rams Revealed. I'm your host, JB Long. It is week 6. The Rams are 4-1, and they're off to New York to face the Giants after their mini-bye. And our guest is first-year defensive lineman Michael Hoecht. Michael, let me start with this. Hoecht, Hoecht.
Hoecht. All the letters in the middle are silent.
Okay, please explain. What are the origins of this?
It's a German last name. I believe it comes from Hoecht, and it means height, so that seems to be pretty fitting.
There you go. And you just celebrated your 24th birthday last week?
I did.
Were you able to celebrate, or did football get in the way?
Football got in the way, but thankfully my parents were in town, so I was able to go out to dinner with them on the Sunday after the game.
Excellent. All right, well, let's start from the beginning then. October 5th. 1997. Oakville, Ontario. Do I have that correct?
You have that correct.
Help us geographically. That's between Toronto and Hamilton, a couple of big cities.
Yep, right in the middle there.
And what were your family circumstances that had you born Canadian?
So my whole family's Canadian, including extended family. And then my parents met in Toronto, and when they decided to have me, they were living in Oakville at the time. And then around 2001, we moved down to Dayton, Ohio, and that's where I spent the majority of my childhood. Growing up in Dayton, that's really how a Canadian kid gets into football at a young age. And then, that eventually led me to Brown and then here.
We'll get into all that. I do wonder where they're living now, and I ask because Oakwood, Ohio is pretty close to Indy, and so I wondered if that was a family opportunity, if they were still in the area to go see you play the Colts.
It's not. They're back in Toronto now.
Okay, so you do consider yourself a Canadian.
I do.
More than
Canadian
an Ohioan.
passport, born.
And then tell me about how that impacted your football upbringing. Like, was the move part of fostering your football development? Would you have had the same football opportunities had you been raised in Ontario instead of Ohio?
I'm not sure exactly the opportunities would have been the same. I know that where I grew up in Oakwood, football is a really special part of that community. It has the whole Friday Night Lights vibe to it. It's a small town in the Midwest. So you get that entire community out to the games and supporting everybody, and from a very young age, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go be the Friday Night Lights football player, and so growing up there, that's really what directed me into football. Now, growing up in Canada, I may have landed at the same place, but I think, in Oakwood, that's really what drove me to it.
And you're a hoop star too, right? In Ohio? Were
Yes.
you a LeBron guy?
Yeah. Yep.
I know it wasn't exactly your portion of Ohio.
I was right at that young, vulnerable age when, trust issues can happen when your best player leaves your team. But no, he's well forgiven, and he won a championship for Cleveland.
How about as a Canadian? Curling or hockey?
Hockey, 100%.
Really?
Big Maple Leafs fan. My whole family's Maple Leafs fan. Some of my mom's side are Senators fans, so there's always that inter-Hoyt Donnelly rivalry between Ottawa, Toronto, Maple Leafs, Senators, which is always fun.
All right, so you end up going to Brown, like you said. And for those of us who may not be dialed into Ivy League football, what was the attraction? What was the draw?
So I had heard in high school a really good way of thinking about choosing a college, which was the broken leg model, where if you go to college and you break your leg and you're not able to play football anymore, are you still at the right college? And so when my parents and I were deciding what schools to look at, we wanted to make sure that the academics were as good and as rigorous as the athletics were. That way I'm, in a good position, whether football works at it or not. And if I end up in good enough to make it to the NFL, they'll still find you. And there's been lots of great players, James Devlin, Zach Diossi, who have come out of Brown, made it to the NFL. So I didn't feel like I was hurting my chances there at all. And then Brown, obviously a world-class education, and I loved every second of it there. And the football's really fun. It's 10 games. Every game is the Super Bowl, because if you lose one, you're done.
So even as a prep, you did have NFL aspirations, and you didn't think that by choosing an Ivy League school, you were sacrificing them in any way?
I don't think coming out of high school, I was necessarily like, I'm going to the NFL, but what kid doesn't have it in the back of his head when he's going to play D1 football?
Sure.
That maybe this is something in the future, but I wanted to make sure that I was covered on both ends.
So a couple things. You didn't break your leg, right?
I did not. Yep.
What was your
broken leg plan, though? Like, where was Brown going to take you if football had not panned out professionally?
I was probably going to go the finance route. That's what a lot of my friends and teammates who I lived with in college ended up doing, and they all live in New York right now, and they're having a great time. So I would have done that. I did a summer internship at HPS Investments, which is like a mezzanine credit firm in New York in between my junior and senior year. And so that was more my dipping the toe into the water into the finance world. In case the NFL didn't work out, that would be my, transition into the finance world.
Sure. At what point in your Brown career, though, did you have a sense that, hey, whether or not I get drafted, I think I might have what it takes to continue beyond college?
I think it would be somewhere around mid-junior season. I was playing well. Now, unfortunately, the team wasn't playing well, but I was, doing well. And then it was really more when I started to have agents and scouts start reaching out to me, and they were saying, hey, you could have what it takes to play at the next level if you put that as priority number one. And so that as soon as you hear that as a kid, you're like, well, this is now priority number one. And this is all I eat, sleep, and dream about is going to the NFL. And that's exactly what happened.
There are a lot of Dartmouth graduates in the Rams organization. Are you aware of this?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
So this question may have been planted by one of them, but what was your career record against Big Green?
1-3.
And they ended your senior day in your career.
Yes, which
correct?
we very much could have won that game. I'm not going to say we should have, but we did have an opportunity to win that game at the end. That would have been a good way to end the Brown career.
All right, I may be getting a kickback for putting that in there.
That's fine.
We won't edit it out because you didn't react too negatively to it. But let's fast forward to spring of 2020 now, because some of this is happening for you, right? Some of these potential projections, but the draft comes and goes, and you end up signing with the Rams as a college free agent, but you don't get an off-season program. You don't get preseason games during August. You end up on the practice squad. Any major recollections from that stage of your Rams experience and how it served you moving forward?
So I think if we really look back around March 2020 when everything sort of shut down and I had my pro day scheduled and my pro day gets canceled. And then I actually had a workout with the 49ers at that time that gets canceled. And so I'm 5-alarm fire in my head being like, this is my dream coming to die. But then I was like, I'm not going to let this happen. So I go to our practice fields at Brown, and I record the pro day videos. I'm sitting in iMovie doing all the edits, making sure the timer's set up, and I put together the whole package of everything they would have seen at the pro day, but just virtually. And so then I had my agent start just sending that out to anybody that could get eyeballs on it. And I really think I would not be denied at least the eyeballs on me as a player. I was running routes as a tight end. I was doing defensive line drills. I was doing all the pro day and the combine numbers. I was making sure that if they wanted to see something, they would have that film without having to come see me in person. And then eventually the draft comes around, and I get the opportunity to sign with the Rams. And they were my number one choice right off the jump, just because I've been such a huge Aaron Donald fan. And having the opportunity to learn with him, have him in the locker room, teach you how to play the sport of football is just so incredible. And it's such an important part of being a young player, is having those older guys around and mentor you and seeing how they've progressed in their careers and what you can draw on from them. And I feel like that was and is a really important piece of why I wanted to come here. I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
That's quite all right. I want to, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you did. I want to follow up on the resume reel, if you will. Is there anyone else in your life that deserves a shout out for partnering with you? Because it seems like you're very enterprising and we're doing this almost single-handedly.
No, there's obviously a ton of people that helped me along the way. So first I have to say my mom, because she was a huge piece of, and my dad too, they were such a huge piece of my upbringing and going out to sports. A great story is when I lived in Canada for my sophomore year of high school, and I played football there, and football wasn't the biggest sport at the high school. And it's raining one day, and it's a Wednesday afternoon, and we're playing football, and my mom's the only one in the stands with an umbrella as the rain comes down. And we were like, these are the people from Ohio who love football. And so, it's people like that give you the support and give you that ability to go and chase those things. And then all of the coaches at Brown, they were instrumental going through that pro day. And so I would sit down with some of them and have them teach me concepts, especially on coverage in the back end in case I'm going into interviews with coaches and they start asking coverage questions. That way I have that piece covered. And then just everybody who I've met in Brown, my friends there, they were all extremely supportive, especially my roommates. There's just been so many people that I'm not mentioning that have just helped me come to where I am today.
Were you confident in the product that you put down at that pro day that combined with your college resume, someone would bite?
Yeah, I think I did. And I had conversations with my agent, and he was, fairly sure that we could get something to go. And all I really wanted was an opportunity. I knew that if I got in somewhere that I'd be able to work my way and be able to stick around. But I just needed to get that shot. And so eventually I got my foot in the door, and everything's worked out so far.
Did the 2020 Rams practice squad feel like a continuation of that opportunity, or maybe the disappointment of having not yet realized the ultimate goal?
No, I at that point, I sort of treated it as, this is kind of like a redshirt year for me, in that I decided to look at it as an opportunity to every single week get reps against one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, which is our offensive line. And so going up against Andrew Whitworth and Rob Havenstein, and just having all these guys and playing and practicing against them, that was key to my development as a player. Because coming from Ivy League football, there is the next step that you do have to take. And I think those reps, being on the practice squad every year when you go against the ones, that is instrumental in growing and developing as a player. For me, it was.
Did you have that welcome to the NFL moment?
I'm not sure it was exactly one specific moment, but there was definitely times when, you're in the heat of camp and periods are getting very competitive and the music's going loud, and you just kind of like take that moment to look around and be like, this is the NFL. Like, everybody's here for a job, and everybody's here wants your job.
So let's jump ahead then to 2021. And this time, football circumstances are a bit more normal, though we're not completely there yet, I understand. Just to kind of take people behind the curtain, yours was a name that I heard as much or more often than maybe any roster bubble candidate. And what I mean by that is, if you had asked me by, say, August, there was very little doubt in my mind that you were going to make this team. I wonder if that was your lived experience as well, or if it was more uncertain from your perspective.
So I felt that I was having a good camp. I thought that I had taken another step from last year into being able to contribute and help on the team. But obviously, as an undrafted guy and as a guy and playing on one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the NFL, you're always have that in the back of your head that maybe they're going to do some sort of move. Nothing's ever set in stone. So you always have that lingering in the back of your head. I felt that I had put as good of a resume on tape as possible, and I was just going to let the coaches make their decision at that point.
What did it mean to make the roster and to make your NFL debut at SoFi Stadium on Sunday Night Football?
It was a pretty special moment. So after that last preseason game and the Denver game, I had the strip sack, the fumble recovery, and then when I didn't play the second half, that was kind of maybe the first little indicator that I think you've done this. And then when the cuts finally happen, and I had to talk with Eric Henderson, our defensive line coach, and he eventually told me it's just grin ear to ear, call the parents, tell everybody. But unfortunately, it's a quick turnaround because we had the Bears Sunday Night Football opening week, and I'm not going to let the distraction of making the team take away from I want to perform on Sunday night at the biggest stage I've ever played in.
That step that you mentioned between your redshirt years, you described it, and this your first NFL rostered season. Do you know what that step was? Like, can you identify the progress you've made?
Yeah, I think it's getting more comfortable identifying types of blocks and making the transition from defending against a college offense, which is more spread out, versus a pro style offense, which you get a lot more in the NFL. And then I think it's also understanding what offenses are doing, and also in college you're in the premier pass rushing spot usually, whereas here that's always going to be Aaron Donald. So it's learning to play off other teammates and learn how to play your role really effectively such that you can help contribute.
So you mentioned AD 99 a couple of times now. It seems like you're going to tell your grandchildren someday about the time that you lined up on the same defensive front as him. What does it mean to you to have accomplished that, to have, I don't want to say lucked into it, because you had the intention and you executed the vision, but it could have been any of the 31 other teams?
Sure. I think it's just it's special to me because he's such an inspiring person, and his work ethic is just exactly what I was looking for in a role model. And so, to watch him in the weight room, watch him be the fastest dude on the field, watch him be the strongest dude on the field, watch him be the smartest dude on the field. I think it's just something that I want to look at, and, I want to model my experience in the NFL after what he's done. And I think anybody, should do that because he's got the blueprint for it. Now, not everybody can do what he does, but certainly that's something that you can continue to strive for.
The word you used there was interesting to me, smartest, because watching Aaron Donald, he has one of, if not the highest football IQs I've ever been exposed to. You talked about how the year 1 to year 2 difference was kind of learning some of those clues. Give me a sense of how much of a thinking man's game playing defensive line and defensive football is in the NFL.
So there's definitely an aspect of it that you have to understand what offenses are trying to accomplish so that you can know when you get certain types of blocks where the problems are. And it's less that in the moment you're thinking about it and more that you just get so used to repping it in practice that it becomes, second nature and an instinct. And defensive line, it's a very instinctual position because as soon as the offensive line moves, you're reacting off them and you're reacting to what the different signals you're getting from the quarterbacks or even the formations at the beginning of the play. So there's a lot going on there. And I think our defensive line coach sometimes gets on me that I overthink things and that I start to, think I have all the right answers when sometimes you just have to go. And that's something I'm still continuing to work on.
From Aaron's perspective, though, I've heard about the film room work that he puts in, the study. It's almost like he's preparing for a final exam each week going into a game. Would that be, given your kind of Ivy League academic experience,
I'd say so.
A good parallel?
Yeah, I think, he's definitely a guy that when he goes into a game, he's going to know all the answers to the test already. And he's played a lot of football now, so he's got a really good instinctual feel for what's coming.
All right, let's get to grading. How would you evaluate your performance so far?
I think it's been good. I think I've continued to take steps in the right direction, and I'm only going to continue to improve as more and more snaps. And I think that something I'm proud of is that this year I'm helping contribute on special teams as well. And that's something that, can help me see the field, get comfortable in the NFL, and just continue to play ball. So that's something that I'm glad I've taken that next step special teams wise as well.
And turn this from an opportunity into a career, right?
Exactly,
to have some staying power.
That is the end goal.
Give me a sense of where this team is at, big picture, this roster, these 4-1 Rams coming off that win in Seattle.
I think everybody's pretty excited for, this is kind of the first quarter of the season done. And besides the Arizona Cardinals game, I think we've accomplished what we've needed to accomplish. But when I think everybody in this room and everybody in the film room goes into it and say, we left a ton of plays on the field and there's so much more that we could be so much better. We can, there's so many things on offense, so many things on defense, so many things on special teams that we're only going to continue to get better and better at. And we're only going to get smarter and smarter. And we're only going to hit harder and harder throughout the season. And that's what that takes to take this team and continue to do what we have done. And so I think everybody's really hungry right now because even if you win a game, I think guys in this room are wired the right way, where when they see something on film that they could have done better, that upsets them more than when they do have a really good play, is they see that bad play and they want to eliminate those. And that's what I think we're all after.
That hunger is poignant for me because you're 4-1, and I'm not sure if you would say collectively that you've played a complete game, maybe save for the win over Tampa Bay was probably pretty close. But as you get set to face a 1-4 Giants team kind of coming off of a 9-10 day layoff, that hunger to me is important, right? Because it sounds like you're trying to play your standard rather than play whoever's on the other side of the field.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about that it's all about us and what we do. And when we play at our best, I don't think there's many teams that, are going to beat us. And so I'm excited. I think everybody's well rested. We're going to come back with a good game plan. And I think we're going to give the people a good show.
Ready for our closing segment, 3 and Out?
Let's do it.
I gave you a bit of a preview, not the questions, but the theme. And for those of you who are new to the podcast, each week I ask the Rams player 3 final questions. If they get all of them correct, I make a donation to the LA Rams Foundation. Same for you and all of your future teammates who step into this room. Okay, as a self-proclaimed Canadian, you've lived now both in Canada and the United States, of course, so I wonder, milk in a bag or milk in a carton?
I prefer milk in a carton, but milk in a bag just makes way more sense to me.
In what way?
That when you throw it out, it takes up a lot less room in the trash can, and it's reusable too.
Okay, so practical.
Yes.
1 for 1. Question number 2. I've read that you were a calculus tutor while at Brown. Is that correct?
That was correct.
Were you tutoring fellow Brown students or prep students in the area? Who were you working with?
I was tutoring. It started off just a lot of football teammates that I was sort of helping out, and then it kind of grew to the point where I had 30 kids sitting down, and I was teaching calculus all of a sudden.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to identify the following function graph, okay? Apologies to those of you who are listening to the audio podcast, but if you're with us on YouTube, take a look here, and I've made it multiple choice for you, Michael.
Yeah.
Is the function A linear, B square, C cube, or D square root?
D cube.
Oh, you got it. I'm not surprised. How did you get into calculus?
I had a really good teacher in high school, and he just burned it into our brains when we were studying for like the AP math class in high school, and then all that just carried over, and it just became something that I was pretty good at.
I got cold chills just even looking at that graph and thinking back to when it was a significant portion of my life. All right, final question. Question number 3 here on 3 and Out. Does Jonathan Moxen belong on the Brown football Mount Rushmore?
I would say so, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about because you're okay. Varsity Blues.
Yep.
Have you seen the movie?
I have not.
Mox, played by James Vanderbeek. It was a very popular film for my generation. You were about 2 when the movie came out. I'm not sure he rises to the Fritz Pollard or John Heisman.
I'm going to have to check it out.
Brown status, but you go watch Varsity Blues on your bye
and I will report. Yeah.
And you report back because there's a connection to Brown football, believe it or not. As for tonight's plans, you're going to the Dodgers game, I hear.
I'm excited.
Baseball fan?
I am when I can be. 180 teams, a lot of games, but if there's a game on, I'm going to try and watch it.
All right, well, good luck getting down to Chavez Ravine and taking care of the Giants and helping the Dodgers on to the next round of the Major League playoffs. The smartest man in the room, certainly maybe in the entire Rams facility, Michael Hoecht, thank you. It's good to get to know you a little bit better.
Yes, it's been awesome. This has been fun.
Wish you a long and successful career. Thank you for listening. I'm JB Long, and this is Rams Revealed.